r/AskReddit. Police officers of Reddit, who's the smartest criminal you've ever encountered? I worked with this one guy who had a lengthy record. He had a system for getting released if he got caught after committing a crime. If the police were in pursuit and he knew he was about to be cornered, he would act insane. His girl would play along with it, telling the police that he was off his medication. The police would arrest him, but then send him to a mental ward with papers instructing the ward to release to police once he was cleared. Once he was in the mental ward, he would cause a distraction that would make the person attending the desk with the file cabinet to leave said cabinet. He would then crawl to the file cabinet, look for his release to police papers, and then would literally eat the papers. When the psych evaluators decided that he was stable enough to be released, there would be no instructions to send him to the police, and he would be released to the general public. He did this about 10 times until police officers noticed him back on the streets. This stunt forced the state to change their procedure for detaining mentally unstable suspects. What state was this? Also, instead of eating it, why didn't he just flush it down the toilet? I'm not sure. I didn't feel like it was my place to question a convicted felon on his paper disposal tactics. A French thief who spent 10 years in prison became a comedian when he got out. One of his stories: finds a building, goes in, chooses a floor, and transforms the exit door into an extra apartment. Puts the apartment number, fake lock, welcome rug, etc. Puts an iPhone for sale. The person comes to buy it. He opens the door in a shower robe and says, "Give me 1 second. I'm just gonna count the money," and poof, he's gone from the exit stairs. This seems like exactly the kind of crime a comedian would commit. A friend of my brother moved to Israel, where for a period of time it was / acceptable to drive with an American driver's license. He was pulled over for speeding, and when asked for his license, gave the officer his Costco card. Costco is a membership-based retail warehouse in the US and a few other countries. The exchange apparently went something like this: "Officer, Costco? What is Costco?" "Friend, it's the state I'm from." "Officer, that sounds made up." "Friend, there are lots of states you probably haven't heard of. Have you heard of Arkansas? How about Idaho?" "Officer, I guess not." "Friend, well, I'm from the small state of Costco." The officer didn't have a response and wound up writing the ticket to someone with a Costco driver's license. Friend framed the ticket and still has it hanging on his wall. Reminds me of a family friend of mine. Very funny Australian with an absolutely horrendous Boggan accent. Well, late 80s, he's driving through Texas and runs a red light and is immediately pulled over by a 250-pound Texan police officer with an equally horrendous accent. The way the stories goes, this man is obviously not the brightest chapter. So our friend, when asked about running the red light, gets very apologetic and explains that he gets easily confused because in Australia, you know how things are over down there. Red means go and green means stop. The cop actually let this man go with a warning. "I did not know that." Well, in America, red means stop, so don't make this mistake again. A guy I went to high school had been stealing from Walmart in a pretty clever way. He would grab video games, MP3 players, beer, etc. and throw them away in a trash can in the garden section. The workers never checked the trash contents, and he would just wait, sometimes 5 hours, until they emptied the trash in the back dumpster and hop in to get his items. Once he took a cardboard box from a display inside, filled it with video games, a PS3, and extra controllers. He grabbed some tape and pens, and drew all over the box, and taped it up to make it look used, and tossed it. An hour later, he had a whole new PS3 and stack of games. Do you notice that the bank vault had put its safety deposit boxes in a way that there was a space at the 90-degree point that wall meets wall? He times it on a Friday and climbed and hid in that spot. He had actually rented out a box which he put in a clock which alarms violently to see if there are sound sensors in the vault. Waited outside, nothing. Employees closed the vault with him inside. He has the whole weekend and gets to knocking the locks out with a hammer one at a time and stole everything. He then replaced the locks back to look like they are not tampered with and jumped back into the spot. Monday morning, the vault is open. Turns out bank was doing renovations. He picked that day, throws on a worker's jacket and literally walks out the bank. Employees did not notice till the first person who came to open his safety deposit box. The lock fell in. They could not identify who did it, and he would have got away with it save his big mouth. Turns out he was a hairdresser and kept telling his customers how he stole from the bank, and he was a genius and they will never catch him. Someone snitched and he was picked up. They could not value what he stole as safety box contents are unknown. Because of this dude, all banks now fill the space where the two safety cabinets meet with concrete. Made a movie Inside Man loosely based on him. His name was William Smarto. Guy I went to high school with kept selling this gold necklace under a fake ID to jewelry stores. When he had cash in his hand from the sale, he'd flash a real looking airsoft gun and demand the necklace back. Worked about twice until the third guy knew what the deal was. If someone tried selling this one particular necklace, shop owner went in the back to reference an appraisal book and just called the cops. Funny part was he got like a year for the robberies, but using the fake gun added 5 years to the sentence. Here's one. I knew this guy back in the early 80s. Let's call him Jim. Well, he really wanted this high-powered super bike, but he knew he couldn't ever afford it. So what he did was to take drive to London and scout it about for a few days until he found that particular model parked outside a house. He goes back that night with a slidder hammer, pulls the lock, and steals the bike. He gets it home, puts it in his garage, and completely strips it so that the only thing left is the frame and the bottom half of the engine, which he drags into the weeds at the bottom of his garden. Then he pours fuel over it and burns it a bit. A few weeks pass, and weeds have started growing over it. It's at that point he calls the cops and reports that someone had dumped a bike frame in his garden. The cops show up, and he explains that he'd just got back from being away and found it. The cops take the frame and note down high name and address. A few days later, the cops call him and say that the bike had been stolen from London a month or so ago, from the serial number on the bottom half of the engine and frame, and that the insurance company had classed the bike as a write-off and had told the cops to dispose of it. Now, because the frame was found in his garden and the insurance company didn't want it, the cops were duty bound to ask him if he wanted to keep it or if they should throw it. So he tells them that he'd always wanted to build a bike. He gets the frame back from them, repaints it, then puts it all back together and re-registers it as a Q-Reg, stolen and recovered. I heard about one person that pulled a shoplifting scam on a large, popular and well-known US retail store. They walked in with some cheap nylon product. To get one of those, I walked in with this stickers they used to put on returning merchandise. The sticker easily peeled off the product and damaged. They walked to the electronics department, grabbed an expensive box off the shelf, and went to customer service. They placed the sticker on the big box and asked if they could return the item without a receipt. Unfortunately, no, not without the original receipt. Dang it, and they walk out. Customer service even gave the doorman the thumbs up, having just interacted with the customer. This took place before widespread inventory controls and cameras absolutely everywhere. I feel like I would remember what I had and hadn't recently put a sticker on. But perhaps I wouldn't be getting paid enough to worry too much about it. I believe at this time, the large national chain we are talking about was hiring people that just had to remember to smile. They did not have to be very sharp at the door or young. I remember an officer telling me about a B&D alarm he and his team responded to. No one was there to report the alarm. It must have been a security monitoring company that called. When police showed up, everything seemed normal. Most lights were off, and there was an employee still working. Explains he was there working late and must have set off an alarm. They almost believed him until he set up before saying the name of the company he worked for. After that it was downhill, but with a little more research he would have pretty much gotten away with it. I don't care how long I've been working for a company, I'd probably still say with my dumbass too. I'll be sure not to loiter around any crime scenes now. I'm not a cop, but I worked crime scene. This guy had attached GPS to the bottom of people's cars who owned houses he wanted to rob. He did it to ensure they wouldn't be showing up while he was ransacking the place. Mandatory, not a police officer, but the story of the Mumbai Opera House jewelry heist probably belongs here. Sometime in 1987 a guy placed an ad in the newspaper looking for recruits to the CBI, the investigative police agency in India. A bunch of people showed up. He'd rented an office to interview them. He selected 26 of the candidates, told them to assemble the next day near a popular jewelry shop to practice a mock raid. He had a fake search warrant and all handy. Then he led these guys to conduct a raid on the jewelry shop. Together they collected all the jewelry in the shop, took all the cash, and then he asked the trainees to keep a watch on the shop employees while he deposited the stuff. He then walked out and disappeared. Took half an hour for someone to suspect something wrong and call the actual police. They never caught the guy. Never even found out who he was. The balls on that man. Edit. Typo. I'm laughing imagining the guys letting their guard down, eventually realizing that this dude probably isn't coming back. It's just genius. You've been visited by the brave underwater doggo. Please like and subscribe for more videos like this. The doggo would appreciate it very much. Thank you for watching.